Good morning, ladies and gentlewomen. I just finished reading this article about how ETs are more likely to come in peace than they are to violently invade us, and I wanted to go over some of this while it's still somewhat bouncing around in my head. This assumption of peaceful visitors sounds really nice, obviously, but you gotta keep in mind that this is based on one man's opinion, this article anyways. That man does happen to be Bill Diamond, the president and CEO of the SETI Institute, so some might argue that his position gives him a unique perspective and insight into the subject. I'm sure other people might debate that it makes him more likely to be deceptive or less credible, given, SETI's heavy links to NASA and government, all that. But take that for what you will. I don't have any reason to doubt this guy, but I do have a few points I'd like to add to his overall assessment of this whole concept. I'm not going to read this entire article verbatim like I do a lot of times. I'm just going to cover a few key points within it. Well, actually, the headline and the subheadline pretty much sum up the aspects of this idea that I wanted to go over. So, the first headline says, "Here's why aliens will probably come in peace." And then directly underneath that, ahead of World Space Week, we talked to SETI Institute Chief Bill Diamond about the search for extraterrestrial life and why the idea of aliens coming to Earth to destroy us is absurd. Now, interestingly enough, I don't actually see a lot of argument in this article to even try to reinforce these claims. There's a lot in this article about the history of SETI, the Drake equation, all kinds of stuff, and there's some pretty persuasive conjecture and reasoning, but the headline doesn't really match what you'd expect to see in the content of the article. Anyways, this theory is something that wouldn't be that easy to prove anyways, unless, of course, it actually happens, like actual contact. So one thing I want to emphasize is intent. There is some pretty compelling evidence that physical alien contact could indeed wipe out the human race, whether ET beings wanted that to happen or not. Doesn't matter what their intention is in this scenario. One possible way this could unfold is the spread of pathogens that we can't even comprehend yet, for example. And what's convincing about that, to me anyways, is the spread of disease to indigenous natives throughout history, especially during the days of early exploration and colonialism, particularly in the Americas. We know for an absolute fact that there was deliberate genocide and extermination, and there's strong evidence that there was intentional spread of disease. Most of us know about the smallpox blankets, we've heard about all the crude, rudimentary early forms of biowarfare. But there's overwhelming evidence of disease spreading unintentionally as well from invaders to natives. Having no previous exposure to European and Asian pathogens, therefore never having a chance to develop antibodies to fight those pathogens, those native populations were left virtually helpless against the spread of those pathogens and the subsequent mortality. So for the same reason, there is major concern among modern-day explorers when they study, for example, isolated tribes in the Amazon or something like that. Now, this scenario could easily be repeated, even by well-meaning alien species, upon their visit to Earth. And it has to be said, how likely is this? Not very likely, in my opinion anyways. I postulate that any biological species that has mastered interstellar travel, or even local galactic travel, would surely be at least scientifically advanced enough to understand the risks associated with meeting us for the first time. However, there's also a possibility of a well-meaning visitor causing an accidental war or, some type of conflict, anything like that. How would militaries and governments around the world react to a public visit of an alien race? It seems fair to assume that some would try to ally with the visitors, so is it really impossible that others might axiomatically be defensive of them in a military capacity? I think there's some possibility that a visit could trigger some type of nuclear exchange, if there was enough tension. I mean, we've come close to it over far less in the past. And that's just a few scenarios where even nice ETs could be harmful to us as a civilization. But what do you guys think? What are some other possible situations where well-intentioned extraterrestrial species might damage us as a global society? Of course, that's not all there is to say about this article either. I think it's irresponsible to assume that just because a civilization is advanced, then they must be peaceful as well. I mean, if we're going to assume that, then we must also assume that every single alien abduction or cattle mutilation story is either a lie or a hoax or a case of mistaken identity, something along those lines. And I don't think I need to name off a list of every seemingly credible alien abduction story. But if that's something you guys are interested, let me know. I'll do a whole video on it. It just completely goes without saying, though, that the kidnapping of an intelligent and unwilling person for the purpose of experimentation and research, or really any purpose, is not the behavior of a peaceful species, per se. And as you guys already know, I don't really like to inject my opinion into things like this. I just don't like to speculate on my own videos. I will say, however, that there are stories of abduction that I am very inclined to believe are credible. But what do you guys think? Are they all just delusions and hoaxes? Or are people actually being taken against their will and pseudo-surgically examined? What do you think? Well, that's pretty much all I really wanted to get into right now, but I like this subject, and I like the conversation about it in general. If they're out there, are they peaceful? Are there different species of them? You know, different alien races? Some malevolent and some benevolent? I don't know, but I want to know what you guys think, so please let me know. And there you have it. Like I always say, still working on some other stuff, so don't forget to check back soon, guys. Alright, peace.